Welcome to People. I'm Shirley Lin. Today my guest is Richard Zhang Shihan, who is the country manager of Costco Taiwan, that membership warehouse club, right?
That is correct, yes.
Right. And also Richard is a former basketball player, national basketball player, and even played for the Taiwan team, representing Taiwan for about 3 years. But we'll get to that later. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you for inviting me on the show. Appreciate that.
No problem. It's great to have you here. Now, you're a very tall guy. You've got 198 centimeters tall.
That's about 6 feet 6 inches. Yeah.
Okay. I'm only 5'7". But do you have really, really tall parents?
Actually, my parents, my mom is tall. My mom's about 5'8". And for her generation, that's quite tall.
Yeah.
I have 2 older sisters that are also 5'8". So in terms of averages, I guess we are tall for a Chinese family. I still remember growing up, we would walk into a restaurant and they would see my dad, who's about 5'11", and my mom 5'8", and my 2 sisters 5'8". And then I'd walk in the back and then they go, wow, 6'6".
Yeah.
So our family is pretty tall.
You're saying your sisters are older sisters?
I have 2 older sisters, 2 years older and 4 years older.
Oh, okay. So you're youngest and you turn out to be
the
tallest in the
right.
family. So are both of your parents athletic?
Actually, my mom is athletic. My mom went to Kaohsiung High School, Kaohsiung Girls High School.
Okay.
And she actually played basketball on the basketball team.
Oh, I see.
But my whole family, my dad, even my grandmother, they enjoy watching sports. So I remember growing up, they would never, ever miss a game. Depending on where it was, even if it was in a different state, they would drive and be at every game, which was very memorable for me to have your parents and family members in the stands when growing up. That's real special to me.
Right, that is great because not most Taiwanese parents do that, because they both work, they're really so much into their work. They think that as long as they earn money to, raise their children, that's good enough. But anyway, so I like that kind of, spirit. I think it should be that way.
I think growing up in the U.S., there's really a balance between academics and some other activities, school activities. And fortunate for me, sports was my activity. And I think in the U.S., parents, for the most part, like that balance, and they really support children doing something outside of the academic arena to provide a balance. And I think I was fortunate to have that, grow up in that environment.
Yeah, I think we need more of that here.
Oh, I agree.
Because you're saying that exercising actually makes you more productive at work.
Oh, absolutely. I believe in that 100%. I encourage all our employees to get plenty of exercise. I think it's a great way to manage stress. When I say manage, I think it's impossible to eliminate stress. It's always there. But I think you have to have some way to manage it. And athletics, sports is a great way of doing it. And it's good for the body. And I think that it gives your body and your mind a balance. And it's healthy. And it's something that we have to do. And a lot of us don't do enough of it.
So you got into basketball because of your mother?
No, I think I got in basketball just because growing up, they saw this tall Chinese kid, pretty lanky, and they said, hey, listen, you want to play basketball? And I said, sure, why not? And my friends were playing basketball. So growing up, just hanging out with friends, I think one thing I was fortunate enough was that I got into organized basketball very early. And when I say organized, I mean there was a coach, and there was games, and there was a league. And I think that provided me with good habits from a very early age relative to sports fundamentals. And that carried on to grammar school and ultimately high school. And I played 4 years in high school. And I was very fortunate to get a college scholarship to play basketball at the University of California, Berkeley. And then from there, I was spotted by a reporter here in Taiwan.
What?
Yeah, from the China Times sports department. And they said they figured there was a Chinese guy playing NCAA basketball. Who is he? And they came and they asked me to come back to Taipei and try out for the men's national team.
Okay.
And that's how I started coming back to Taiwan, playing basketball back in 1985.
Oh, yeah, and you were here in Taiwan for 3 years playing for Taiwan.
That's right.
What were those 3 years like?
Oh, it was great. growing up in the States, moving there when I was 4 years old, and not coming back to Taipei for all those years, or Asia for that matter, and to come back to Taiwan and see how different Asia, and especially Taipei, was compared to Southern California, but at the same time to see how similar it was.
Yeah.
So there's kind of that dichotomy. And never being here, I was very, very intrigued for the fact that there was so much to see and so much to kind of reflect and to know about my background as being a Chinese American. And growing up in the States, and when I was growing up in Los Angeles, Orange County, it wasn't like it is today, where there's so many immigrants and so many Chinese coming back. I remember my high school, I had 4 Asians in my high school. You know, 1 Chinese, 1 Japanese, and 2 Filipinos, and that was it. Nowadays, you go back to a high school in the States, and it's like a Chinese phone book. Ling, Zhang, Chen, a whole bunch of that. So it's different. But to come back to Taipei back in the 80s was great. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
So you're saying that there are some similarities between Southern California and Taiwan. What are the similarities?
Well, I think the world's getting smaller now. And if you look at now, I mean, all the conveniences. It's not, with the Starbucks and the fast food and
you mean those kind of things?
Yeah, and I think that's obvious. But I think you look at the people. I think especially Taiwan, where people are so mobile. They could be in Canada overnight. They could spend a week in New York. They can go to Europe. They're in Australia. I think the world is becoming much smaller, and it's not so different anymore. And I could be, I talk to my friends, and we'll have breakfast somewhere, and I'll say, we could be sitting here, we could be anywhere in the world. We could be in San Francisco, we could be in Boston. It's just so similar. And there's, and I think that's good in many respects. And I think if you look at Taiwan compared to, in my opinion, compared to other countries in Asia, I think Taiwan still has a sense of its ancestry maintained with a traditional, and you can see a temple down the street, and you still have some of that. So there's a balance between old and new. If you go to somewhere in, let's say, for instance, Singapore, everywhere you look, it's pretty much new. So I think a lot of times when my friends come to Asia, I said, well, you stop in Taiwan. And they go, why Taiwan? We want to go to China, we want to go to Hong Kong. I said, but you know what, Taiwan's got a good balance of the old and the new.
I like that too. I used to live in Boston, and I think Boston is a city that's a balance of old and new, and that's the way I like it. Yeah.
I think it's unique that way.
Right. Yeah. Now, you didn't think about taking basketball as making your lifelong profession and money-making profession. So what made you, to just drop it when you were at your peak? And that's what usually people don't give up at the peak.
That's a great question. I've been asked that question many times. What made the transition, or what inspired you to give up something that you've done all your life and something that you obviously love? And I say this to young people as well. I say that it's great to play sports. It's great to do that, but you have to give yourself a time limit or a timeline. When the time is right, you have to drop it, because you need to get on with life. And I think that if you look at sports in Taiwan, for example, this market, it is not big enough to have a long-lasting career, if you will, in this market, in sports. If you are in the US or in Europe and you're involved in a sport that's a big-time sport, big volume sport, whether it's professional basketball, Major League Baseball, and you can sign a big contract, it's different. That contract can give you a head start in life, but in this environment it's very difficult. And I saw that very early in life, or in my early career here. And I said, coming back to Taiwan was great because I could play professionally for 1 or 2 years. And the fun thing about it was I was getting paid.
Okay,
because,
while you're playing something you love.
Right. And when I was growing up in the States, playing was just a passion. Never got paid for it. But we were able to get a college scholarship, which was great. But to come here and get paid a salary for playing basketball, that was great.
Yeah.
But then, 2 or 3 years later, I said, it's time. It's really time to get back and really start your career, and the sooner the better.
Are you just saying that for sports? I mean, if someone, you're telling someone who loves sports and has been in sports for a while, to give that up at a certain point and think about, the future and, what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Are you only saying that for someone who was focused on sports in the beginning, or
I think
or
for
any
me,
profession or any hobby or interest?
I think sports is a very unforgiving activity, and I'll tell
Okay,
you why.
well, what a word you're using.
Right.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, from a former athlete, sports is unforgiving because there are a lot of unpredictable variables. Okay, for instance, injury.
Yeah, I was just
Now,
thinking about that.
I got injured my freshman year in college.
Oh,
I think it was the 11th game, and I came down from a rebound and tore my anterior cruciate ligament, what they call it ACL. And within a second, let's not even talk about the pain, but all the years of practicing could have been ended within that one play. Okay, then it took me 2 years to get back.
Okay.
1 year of recovery and 1 year of rehabilitation to get back to my playing days, and probably not 100% ever. So that's why I say sports is very unforgiving in that respect. Whereas if you have a hobby and you can make a hobby into a profession, that's great, because you don't have that unpredictability as you do in sports. That's number one. Secondly is that our lifespan is very different than a professional person or a person who's working, because in the working world, as you get older, you are accruing experience.
Okay.
And
Right.
your pay scale should be increasing as you get older.
Okay.
But for an athlete, it's just the opposite. Your pay scale starts very high and it starts to diminish and decrease as you get older.
Right.
So if you are 35 years old and you're a professional athlete, I guarantee you're not getting paid as much as you were when you were 25.
Oh, okay.
So these two variables are unforgiving, and they're very not suitable for longevity. Whereas if you have an interest, or if you have a hobby and you want to make it into a career, it actually it accelerates as you get older, as you get more experienced, as you get more senior in your profession. There's the difference between athletes, and a regular working person.
What's another profession besides sports that kind of goes along the same line, the theory that you've got here?
I think anything that's more of entertainment, performance.
Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah, because what happens is that there's a, in the business, in the retail business, we call it a product cycle. So something comes out, whether it's a product, in the beginning it's real hot, like a fan. It comes out and everybody wants to buy it, and all of a sudden, say, wait a minute, this fan's been around the market for a couple of years now. And then they say, well, this fan's been in the market 20 years. And something like, I think performers maybe fit in that area as well.
Okay.
They have a product cycle, and then whether it's the era's changing or what have you, there's not a few that have the longevity like a Madonna, who can reinvent herself through
And
the different ages.
are the few
That's
who
right.
can be so lucky to.
They're that 1/10 of 1%.
Yeah.
Same with athletics and athletes.
I see. I see. Did your parents teach you these values, or these, I don't know, the way to look at life? I mean, what was your father doing before? I mean,
My father was a businessman, and
Yeah.
he did a lot of import-export trading
Okay.
between Asia and the U.S. and vice versa. So I think from a very early age, I've seen and witnessed and experienced the hardships of owning your own business.
yeah.
But in terms of the sports and this analogy,